It's 2 o'clock, so I'll call the commission meeting for Thursday, May 19th, 2022 to order. Would you please stand? I'll lead us in the invocation. I'll ask Commissioner Stevens to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're just thankful for this day, and Father, we're thankful that you give each of us help to help our county and help the citizens of the county. Father, I just ask that you just be with our country as we're having elections, and I pray, Father, that you would just help our country to just model you, Father, and just be kind to others, and always realize that there are different opinions out there, but we just need to work together as a team. Thank you for the commissioners we have here. Thank you for the effort that they do to help make this a good authority, and we really appreciate our staff and the hard work they do. I think we have the best staff in the state of Georgia, and we're really blessed to have them. And we just ask you blessings on this meeting and grant us guidance. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's no public comment. Okay, this is the best part of our meetings is when we have an employee recognition. So I want to ask Mark Whitlow if you'd please come up. Mark has been with us for 7 years now. 5 years. And he's really good. First time I met Mark was out of Denmark. He's been keeping up with all my intent. And when we have these hurricanes that come through, he's the one who stays there. And last time I think I was out there, we were talking about hopefully we do his classroom. It's a nice, well, we can do it. That goal for me and him. So that means he can operate any of our plants. So he's got good future. What I want to do, I want to read this certificate here. It says, State of Georgia, Board of Examiners for Certification of Water and Wastewater Treatment Plant Operators in Laboratory County certified Mark Whitlow and give satisfactory evidence of the necessary qualifications as required by the laws of the state of Georgia that is duly certified as a wastewater operator class 1 in the state of Georgia, April 21st, 2022. Congratulations. Supervisor Mark Rice, dude. How long have you been with us for? I've been with you. 27 years. Mark, he went through all the good plants, and he just had hip replacement, so it's not that he's getting old, he's still got about 15 or 20 years. There you go. There you go. Mark's probably that's good on him. Well, Mark came to me about 5 years ago, and he's been a dedicated employee. I encouraged him to go there when it's 3 to 2 into the 1. Because he's definitely good. And Mark's giving us a lot of input on what we need to be doing on this subject. Oh, yeah. And also, he's been operating with the past year. We've done a basic for about 4 of them. So we've done everything for us. I think we need that.
Change the process up a little bit.
Appreciate everything you do for us.
I appreciate y'all having me.
Committee updates. We had a facilities committee meeting yesterday, and a lot of things that we're going to be discussing, we discussed there, and we approved several things to be presented to the full commission. But I want to say that the splosh, the North Mainland splosh, is getting really close to being finished. And one thing we're going to have is a final change order on the pump stations. And we also found out that the last lines for the force main is being put down Ogden Road right now. So it's getting real close to finishing that, and that's a very major project for Glynn County. Also, we had a design meeting with Dunbar Creek on that rehab, and we'll be talking about a paint job there on one of the tanks in a few minutes. And then too, we talked about the GFA loan for the meters. And our interest rate that we're paying for those meters is at 0.07%.
That's correct.
Now, that's 0.07% for a 20-year loan, 15-year loan. I mean, that's almost nothing, so and we need to thank Andrew and LaDonna for working that out. The other thing that we talked about was the Academy Creek change order, and that you're going to find out that that's really going along really good. The screens are operating now, and the good thing we're finding out on the reports that we got on the treatment plant, now the Academy Creek plant is almost doing as good as the other two plants so far as permit and treatment levels, and a lot of it's due to the staff and what they've done, and also the new equipment, the new screens that have been put in, and the filters. And I personally want to, once again, just thank the staff that's been working out there, because if you've gone out to that site, it's been a difficult site to keep working around all that construction company. But that's my report, and now we had a finance committee meeting too, and I'd like Commissioner Duncan to give his report.
Thank you, Chairman. Two items. To be brief, we'd had some discussion yesterday on the deposit policy from Ms. Roberts. She gave us a presentation. My comments are very brief in regards to that. Does not do justice in giving credit to the efforts that were involved, but I will try to do this and share what was done. They talked to other utilities serving our area, and the idea was to align our policy with other utilities as closely as practical. So when a customer, be they residential, commercial, or otherwise, have experiences at another utility regarding deposit, they can expect to have a similar experience here based on their creditworthiness or payment records. So kudos to the team for making that happen. Appreciate what's being done, and we think that will, in my view, will pay good dividends and goodwill from our customers. Second item is the financial statement of the month. All is well is what I have to offer. We are still performing very well from a financial statement in terms of our execution as a utility, and again, that's attributed to Andrew and his team, so thank you very much on that. And Mr. Chairman, that completes the comments I have for the Finance Committee update.
Thank you. We'll move to the approval section.
If I may, move to amend the agenda to move approval item 9 into a discussion. We deferred it yesterday at the Finance Committee, and believe we need to defer it again today for a future meeting.
That's the capital improvement fee. There's a motion to move that to discussion from the approval section.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and second. All in favor? Motion carries. Now, should we put that at the first, or should we put it at the end? Just leave it at the end.
I believe that would be the first discussion item, so it'd be after the
Okay.
completion of the approval item.
All right. First item on the approval agenda is the minutes from the April 21st, 2022 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second motion.
Motion is second. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0, 1 abstain. Next item is Academy Creek Water Pollution Control Plant Rehab Change Order Number 1. Mr. Burris?
Yes, sir. As we just talked about, the Academy Creek project has been ongoing for quite some time. Project actually kicked off December 1st of 2020. We are almost to the contractual substantial completion date of May 25th, and due to extreme supply chain issues with multiple pieces of equipment, we're requesting additional days on the contract. We had some major pieces of equipment, including the bar screens that were 6 months behind schedule. We had a 4-month delay on some gates that were needed around the plant. When I say gates, those are gates that control flow, not gates that go on fencing. And there was a 3-week delay on recoating the influent wet well because that crew got pulled off. So on a timed extension, Ruby Collins, despite having 6 months of delays on one of the largest pieces of equipment, they're only asking for 67 days to complete the project. Other things we've got, we had originally in the contracted amount, we had $135,000 of allowances for as-needed items as they came up on the contract. Throughout the project, we've ran into several items. There's been several gives and takes throughout the project on things as they showed up in the field. Once you start digging around a 50-year-old wastewater plant, you will find things that you had no idea were there. So we've had some gives and takes on that, $135,000, and we've got to the point where we are out of the $135,000. So there are 5 items on the change order log. It says 21, but this is actually the first change order that changes the contract price on this project. Most of these are electrical issues that were determined when we tried to complete the upgrades. The item 18 that says additional handrail around sludge offloading, if you'll look back up to number 5, you'll see Spirac revised layout. We revised the way that was going to be installed, and because of that, there was a handrail that wasn't originally included in the contract because it wasn't necessary. So we saved $36,000 on that, but the new handrail is going to cost us $8,600. And then some Headworks concrete repairs. Once we got the Headworks drained, we saw some concrete that had deteriorated and needed to get fixed. So all told, the total contract change would be $64,464 on an original contract amount of $10.1 million. So it's only a 0.64% contract change and a 67-day extension that is being requested for them to complete the project. This has been reviewed by our engineer of record, and they are in agreement with this change order.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. I move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water Sewer Commission approve change order number 1 for the Academy Creek water pollution control facility rehab project in the amount of $64,464, and approve the time extension of 67 days for Ruby Collins, Inc. to complete the project.
Second.
I'll say,
A motion and a second. Are there any questions?
general comment, but not necessarily
Okay.
question. Are we allowed, Charlie, to have contingency built into projects? As a governmental entity? I mean, like if this was a $10 million project, we know there's gonna be change orders on every project. Are we allowed to like have a 3% contingency going into a project?
We've had that with the contract.
Why do we not do that? I mean, every contract project I've ever done, what we're used to having is got allowances for specific things. In my opinion, we always separate allowances from contingency. And an allowance is something that you know you've got some quantity, you just don't know how many.
Right.
So you've got a unit price quantity. I mean, the concrete, for example.
Right.
You can't tell how much concrete is damaged until you get the tank drained. You'd have a allowance of, $200,000 for concrete repair, and that is $2 per foot, and you're assuming 100,000 units. If you go over, then you're over because it's an actual unit cost. If you only spend if you get it drained and the concrete's in perfect shape, that allowance just sits there and never gets used. But to use allowances really to cover other items, for me, is not really fair from an accounting perspective. Well, not accounting on the accounting world, but accounting on the job site accounting. But I mean, I think we should assume that there's gonna be some contracts. I mean, how many big projects have we done without any change orders? None. And we're not gonna do any in the future without any change orders. So I mean, there needs to be some, in my opinion, just covered from a contingency. The board approves going in instead of a $10 million, $200,000 project. We know it's gonna be a less than $10 million, $500,000 project or whatever. We approve, a couple $100,000 or a couple percentage points as a contingency item that's built into the project budget, so you're not having to come back with everything. Because theoretically, if we deny these today, which I don't believe we're gonna do, the contractor's just hung out to dry. And that's not fair. You're hung out to dry. I mean, because we're really approving them after the fact. So, I mean, in my opinion, from a project perspective, you have a small contingency built into the project that the executive director, Todd, and the team has, you know, the approval to negotiate directly on, and, you know, we don't have to keep up with it like this. And then only if there's a really, really big miss, are you coming back to the board for future approval. And frankly, that helps us know the all-in cost going in, instead of thinking we're doing a $10.2 million project, it was really gonna be 10.5 or whatever. Just food for thought.
Appreciate your comments. Are any questions?
I have a question. So you want to put the contingency and get the price and then add the contingency on top of that?
Most of the time, when I've done
Okay.
something, you've got, you know,
Right.
you've got a hard bid for the project, and that's what you award the contractor.
Okay.
But then there's gonna be some miscellaneous items that might be direct to the owner, that Andrew's doing directly through another sub. I mean, if the project is really to renovate Academy Creek, there might be a $10.5 million project or contract to do most of it, and then there might be one or two things that he's doing with a local contractor who are not in the overall, the scope.
And that would allow the staff to have or the flexibility to go ahead and do those projects without having to come back to us with a change order?
What
But
I,
also, it makes it where every project we've ever done per Andrew has gone over because there's something
Right,
comes up.
yeah.
Well-
Not in the original line.
Every large project.
Yeah, every large project. All the big projects, because there's things that you don't know are
Sure.
gonna happen. And you know that, and every project in the country's like that. So you have a small contingency that is built to do those things. And frankly, it gives us a better understanding of what the overall ask is gonna be, because instead of approving something that's 10, now that wouldn't have covered our meter miss. It's not designed to cover things like our meter miss.
So
It's designed to cover
yeah.
things like we thought we had 40,000 meters and we ended up having 40,500 meters.
So then we would rely on our staff's expertise to build in what they think would be the contingency. Like on something like this with a 15-year-old plant, obviously contingency might be a little bit larger because there could be more to
well,
uncover.
the engineering staff engineering firm should be giving us that direction.
Okay, all
And
right.
then this is something we'll talk about at the next facilities meeting.
Yeah.
Andrew and I have talked about this at length, and we've already added some things, but we can go a little further with it.
That's a good
But
idea.
we'll talk about it next facility meeting.
Great.
Any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Facility Rehab Early Work Package Number 1 authorization. Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. As the design build project, as you mentioned at the facilities update, that we have had ongoing at Dunbar Creek for about the last 90 days. One of the items that was included in the original portion of that scope was to paint the aeration basin number 2. As mentioned when Mr. Whitlow was here, that tank has been down for almost a year. It needs painting and rehab before we can put diffusers back in it. So we've got a quote from our design build contractor, and we're prepared to move forward with that with your approval so that they can get that tank painted prior to storm season approaching. So right now, there's a huge hole in the side of it because we had to cut a hole in the side of it once it was drained to get in there, and we'd like to get that rehab to put back together before we needed it again. So the BRW Construction has provided a quote of $355,480 to paint that aeration basin that's blasted and painted inside and out. We originally bid this out and rejected bids because it came in over budget. The original quote on this was almost $800,000.
Can I
For the motion, move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission authorize early work package number 1 for the Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Facility Rehab Project in the amount of $355,480 to BRW Construction Group LLC for the needed rehab of aeration basin number 2.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion is second. Are there any questions?
Comments. Andrew, you mentioned about us completing the work before we get into the throes of our storm season, and what this will do by completing that basin and putting it back in service will allow us to respond to storm level rainfalls that we receive within our system.
That's correct. Typically at a wastewater plant, you've always got 2 of everything. Normal flows go through 1, but rain events, you a lot of times need both.
Okay, thank you.
How long is the contract for this? How many days?
Well, this will be included with the fuller contract for phase 2, so they're prepared to get started immediately then.
Okay, great.
What's the value of phase 2?
That hasn't been agreed upon, the guaranteed maximum value. The original estimate was $6.5 million.
We'll be getting that number from the
That's
contractor
due by the end
next
of the
week.
month.
Well, and that's kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, I mean, the way I'm used to doing things, you kind of come up with a high-level budget. When I say high-level, it's a conceptual budget. Bring it to the board and say, y'all have an appetite for this before we go too far out. Make sure that everybody's kind of understanding that there's an overall ask of somewhere in this magnitude. Before we go spend a lot of time, money, and labor, is everybody okay with that? And then once people have acknowledged, yes, not formal approval, then you go out and start doing the work, and then come back with a formal ask for a certain amount for a contract. So I just asked them kind of what the total magnitude is.
Any other questions? All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is bid rejection, Oak Grove, force main improvements. Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. Back in 2019, we entered into a comprehensive agreement following an unsolicited proposal request with Carolina Holding Group Partners, LLC, to construct sewer force main improvements on Oak Grove Island to serve a proposed multifamily residential development on the waterfront of Oak Grove Island. As part of that agreement, they were to provide us with plans to bid, and so we could get a value of the capital improvement fee credit they would receive according to the agreement. We released those bids in September, and we received 3 bids, and the low base bid was $2,049,823. Carolina Holdings and their engineering partner, Robert Civil Engineering, have reviewed the bids and determined that based off the cost of the infrastructure improvements, the project's not feasible for completion. So the request here is to reject all the bids per the request of the developer that would be paying for the bid, the contract, and to also terminate the comprehensive agreement per a letter on the 3rd page of your packet there between Carolina Holdings and JWSC to be effective June 19th of 2020. The comprehensive agreement requires a 60-day notice, so they provided that notice April 20th.
Can I have a motion?
Sure, I'll move that Brunswick-Glynn Stormwater and Sewer Commission reject all bids for IFB number 22009 Oak Grove Force Main Improvement due to the termination of the comprehensive agreement between Carolina Holding Group Partners LLC and JWSC to be effective on June 19th, 2022.
Second.
on that.
Motion and second. Any questions?
So, Charlie, we have no risk here by doing this?
And on this, did they state that they may come back if prices start coming more in line, or is this just?
They just said right now this was not gonna be feasible in their business plan, so if it does come back in line, I'm sure they would
Come again.
come again,
What are they anticipating being? You know?
about half that.
And
Actually talked
last
to
year it
us.
may have been. This force main would allow us to serve other people in Oak Grove Island also, rather than just that one development.
But they were gonna get the tap fees from it, correct?
Well, they were gonna get a credit towards the tap fees, and if it exceeded their tap fees, they would get 70%
Yeah,
versus 30% coming to us until they got their full investment returned.
yeah.
So in short, this agreement goes away completely, as though the project never existed. If this developer or any other comes back, we just start from scratch with discussions.
And this is for the condos they were gonna do out there?
No other questions. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is Splash 2016 North Mainland Pump Station Improvements, final balance and change order. Mr. Klein?
Right, Commissioners, good afternoon. This item is final adjusting change order to close out the construction of this component of the Capital Project 702, which is Pump Station 4035 and 4036 upgrades. So this is final adjusting change order, which includes some money as well as some time extension to the contract. And there's supporting documents are closed. Letter from the engineer with recommendations enclosed as well. Change order number 2. Contractor came out for some extra money for additional bypass pumping, and they asked for $127,000. The engineer record evaluated and recommended only 2 months of additional bypassing was due to elements out of control of the contractor in their supply chain. So the engineer of record only recommended $63,596. And then there's also a little bit of demo work that was done on the wet well of 4036, similar to what we did at 4035. That is an additional $23,710. That totals for the $87,306 worth of monies that's being presented right now, and then an additional 60 days added to the contract. So the total contract adjustment would have been 90 days total if this is approved. This did go through Facilities Committee, discussed in depth there as well, and was forwarded for full commission consideration.
Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve change order number 2 and project closeout as described above.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions? These are pump stations that were put in by the city of Brunswick many years ago. And
Correct. Yes, sir.
this is the first time they've really been rehabilitated too. So, and we have odor control facilities at each one of them.
That's correct.
So the bypassing is literally for like the actual pumps and diesel to run and stuff?
Sunbelt, correct. They're rental company with Sunbelt.
The pumps, the hoses, everything.
What's something like that cost, the pump itself?
One of those pumps is, depending on the size, it's $80,000 to $100,000.
So I know that I see these regularly, they're $80,000, $100,000, and we'll rent one for a couple of months for 87. Would we be better off to buy them, own them, and then basically, have the contractor coordinate, manage them, but basically we just own our own fleet and save the rental cost on all the projects, instead of them have to go rent a pump and then just charging it back to us. If we had a fleet of 5 making something up, and then every time there's a project, they say we're gonna need 3 months of bypassing, we gotta, I realize there's a little bit of coordination on our part, but we own the infrastructure, we'll have it in case we ever have an emergency need, but.
We do have a handful of bypass pumps that we use for work that we complete, typically just to avoid there being any finger pointing about contract times or issues that occur during the contract. We require the contractor to provide their own bypassing equipment.
But we got $87,000 in one here, and we can buy it for 80 or 100. Ultimately, hell, even if we're, the project buys it, instead of, just evaluate, even if the contractor's doing it, evaluate them buying it for this project versus renting it for the project, and then we don't have an overrun, because I would argue, if this is an overrun of 60 days for 87, what's the total value of the whole length? So there was another,
Original bid was $150.
so 150 for 4 months,
It was 8.
so 150 for 8, and then you got another 87, we could've just bought the thing and owned it at the end of the year, saved some money, and had a pump at the end that we put back in our fleet. So even if it's their obligation to buy it, their obligation to own it, but at the end of the project, turn it over to us, and then it becomes our asset. Just a thought, not to hold this up.
We'll look into that, but there's still, like our director said, there's some liability we want to avoid since we don't, the contractor has a construction site, he's responsible for all of that.
Well, they buy it and they own it.
Yeah,
They buy it and they own it through the project phase. We do it all the time, it's not a liability issue.
okay. Any other questions? All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next item is infrastructure and easement dedications, Mr. Klein. And on this, we're gonna be talking about a satellite systems agreement that some of y'all might not have heard about, but it's something I think that the county requires.
Correct.
And then we'll have 3 dedications of pump stations where we actually now legally own the property that we've been operating the pump stations for since they were installed. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Correct. So thank you for the introduction to this. This first item, which is related to what's called a satellite systems agreement or satellite agreement, is actually called in Glynn County Water and Sewer Ordinance 21615, and that's attached as an exhibit for you to take a peek at. A couple clarifications that popped up in the Facilities Committee. We spoke with our legal counsel and got some clarification on this. Those are some of those that are listed. Basically, what is a satellite agreement? What does this thing do? It clarifies the responsibility of operation, maintenance, and ownership of a private asset, especially if that private asset is going to serve multiple customers, separate entities. So that's a very short summary of what a satellite agreement is, but it basically spells it out who's responsible for what, who's going to own and operate that infrastructure. The way this one came about and why this one is tied to, we call it Virginia Drive Force Main. there's a segment of force main that an applicant, private developer, constructed on Virginia Drive in the German Village area of St. Simons. And as part of that, since the the infrastructure is going to remain private, Joint Water has determined at this point, or in time at least, not to seek dedication and ownership of that piece of force main. So for that to remain privately owned and maintained, and then also to allow the future connection of additional adjacent potential customers, which we certainly hope, is another reason for doing the satellite agreement, aside from the fact it is Glynn County Water and Sewer Ordinance driven. So I'm happy to answer any particular questions. We did talk about this in depth and facilities. Hopefully.
Can I have a motion?
Now, I'll offer the motion. We ferreted this out in the Facilities Committee yesterday at length. I'll move the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve the satellite systems agreement for the private property improvement known as a private force main on Virginia Drive and Wade Place. I further moved to authorize the executive director to execute future satellite system agreements to facilitate more timely approval of private infrastructure.
Second.
Motion seconded. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I looked at the property out there, so I want to abstain.
Explain to us once again what we're getting into with this.
Yes, sir.
And also the second paragraph of the motion.
Okay, absolutely. It may help if I walk through some of the questions that were asked before and here. And so some of the things that were brought about: how does a satellite system agreement ensure or influence private owner to maintain the asset properly? It is a binding agreement, so it can be enforced contractually or through ordinances. It does not place any onus of maintenance on the Joint Water and Sewer Commission, and this clarifies it. It's one purpose of satellite agreement. Question was also asked is, once this private infrastructure is installed, does that in effect extend the public system? The answer to that is no, not technically. So that extension remains privately owned, so it's not technically a public asset and therefore cannot be used in the calculation of is water and sewer within 500 feet of someone's property. And that's the determination we use, the measurement we use to determine if public water and sewer is available. What it does do is it allows that private asset to be used by adjacent entities or addresses along the way. So it does open up, but the key thing being those entities would have to get permission from the applicant that's listed on the satellite agreement.
If something, but those customers on that private line, we send them a bill, right?
Correct.
They pay us a bill.
Correct, Chairman. That's correct. They would be customers of the Joint Water and Sewer Commission. We would ultimately receive their wastewater, but it would just be via a small segment of private asset. Then it would come to the public asset. Correct. They would receive a bill.
How does that work to get an easement for the private asset? Because obviously they don't own all this.
They obtained a Glynn County right-of-way permit to do the construction.
It is currently in what is considered by Glynn County to be public right-of-way, but the right-of-way, the ownership of the right-of-way is currently in a legal dispute. Yeah.
So the road there's a right-of-way on the road, and they're going to put a private asset on the public right-of-way.
Correct.
Until such time as the right-of-way ownership issue is officially cleared up.
And this applicant has indicated that as soon as we're willing to accept it to be dedicated, they would do that. Now, that's verbal from them. It's no commitment by any means, but they have indicated they have no interest in being in the water and sewer business. So as soon as that issue is cleared up and the Joint Water Commission is receptive, they've indicated they would dedicate this line to us.
And
How long ago was this line put in, approximately?
This was back, see the date on the satellite agreement. Would have been right behind spent a little bit of time. Let's see.
February, March time?
Yeah, March, yeah.
Okay, so
Back in March.
it's new. And when it was installed, I assume that we also inspected it and it meets our standards?
It does. Thank you for asking that. So any infrastructure, water and sewer wise in Glynn County that gets installed, whether it's private, to remain private, privately constructed to be dedicated to joint water, or joint water constructed, is inspected to meet joint water and sewer standards at the time of construction. Tested, approved, all the same.
And in the event the right-of-way is resolved, and if it is on a public right-of-way, then we assume at that point that the line will be dedicated to us, then? That's safe to assume then?
We would pursue that, yes.
One other noteworthy thought is that executing this satellite services agreement meets the requirements of a Glynn County ordinance that any private entity that uses public conveyance and is attached to the utility must be covered under the satellite services agreement, as I understand it. So this is an effort to cover the responsibility of the private owner to maintain those facilities, and at such time the utility chooses to accept it for dedication, then we will know that those facilities have been properly maintained and can be accepted.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0 and 1 abstention. The next 3 items are all just obtaining title to the property, is that correct?
That's correct.
And we looked at this in detail. There's 3 pump stations. We have about another 50 that we don't have clear title to yet that we're working on also. Can I have a motion to accept this?
I'll move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve the documents supporting the acceptance of infrastructure for the properties described herein as public infrastructure for ownership, operation, and maintenance.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions?
No cost to us.
No, sir. We did the surveys to finalize it,
Property.
the property purchase.
No other questions? All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item is Chapel Crossing Oxidation Pond Purchase Agreement. Mr. Dominic?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. As the commissioners are aware, we've been, since late last year, been in negotiations with VC Dirt LLC to sell a tract of property that JWSC thought they owned up around Chapel Crossing. We were under contract with VC Dirt for $50,000 and doing the due diligence on the property. It was determined that there were title issues on the property. My team has been researching those issues, trying to get clear title for the JWSC. It was determined that because of the estates involved and the number of entities that were involved that are either defunct or splintered now, that it would be cost prohibitive for the JWSC Council to proceed with clearing that title. VC Dirt then informed us that they would be willing to put forth the effort to clear that title. So in exchange, they're reducing the purchase price of that property to $7,500 in exchange for a quitclaim deed on the property. And at that point, they'll work on clearing the title if they are able to do that. They would have to file, I imagine they're going to have to file a legal action to get clear title for that.
So do we have any risk by saying that we're giving a quitclaim deed but we don't really own it?
No, that's essentially what the quitclaim deed is. You're not saying you own it, but whatever you do own, you're giving to them.
You just say we don't own the part of it.
Right.
Can I have a motion?
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I hereby move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve the Chapel Crossing Oxidation Pond Purchase Agreement and authorize the chairman to execute the same. I further move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission authorize the chairman to execute a quitclaim deed for the respective parcels pursuant to the Chapel Crossing Oxidation Pond purchase agreement.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and second. Any questions?
This document says buyer and seller. Even though we're the seller, we're not really, I mean, we own.
We're selling whatever interest we have in the
Right.
property.
Exactly.
No further questions. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is GFA loan agreement modifications for the meter project. Ms. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, you may recall that in December of 2020, this board approved a loan with the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority for the meter project. At that particular time, the budget for the project was $15 million. However, we only financed $7.5 million through the original loan with GFA because of GFA's requirement that we draw down loan funds within a 2-year period of time. And at that particular time, we did not anticipate that the meter project would be completed at that particular phase. So we had every intention of coming back for another $7.5 million at this May's 2022 board meeting. We did so, and in addition to that $7.5 million, you may also recall that at the November 2021 meeting of this board, there was a $3.2 million change order approved for that contract as well. So that $7.5 million and that $3.2 million are both built into this loan modification. The project manager of our GFA loan allowed us to do that as a loan modification rather than filing as a second loan. So we saved the initiation fee on that second loan, and makes the bookkeeping a little bit easier for us that we don't have 2 separate loans to track. So we certainly appreciate her making that adjustment for us. We'll note for you that the original interest rate that the chairman mentioned of 0.07% will still be in place, and our original repayment term of 15 years will also remain the same. The completion date was extended from May of 2023 to May of 2025. We don't anticipate that we will need all of that time because at the current rate of approximately 60 meters per day, we're looking at an anticipation completion for the project in early fall, sometime around the end of August.
Next year.
2023. Thank you very much. Yes.
Not this August.
A lot of dates, a lot of numbers. Thank you.
It's a lot of meters to get in the ground.
Indeed, indeed.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve the modification for time extension and additional funding for the GFA loan DW 2020040 in the form of the attached loan modification documents.
Motion and second. Any questions?
I want to offer a couple of comments. This is really a very important project, not only to the utility, but to our customers, because this is going to allow all of our customers to be able to monitor what's going on. We monitor them. We find out if anyone's got leaks, and it's a big step forward. It's also replacing meters that are 15-plus years old. So we're moving to new meters and new technology, and it's a big win. And the fact that we could get an additional loan for 0.07% is just pretty astonishing, considering the fact that the rates are going up everywhere. So I want to just say good job on the staff for the job of getting this done, and I look forward to this project being successfully completed.
And one other comment to add on to Commissioner Cook's remarks is replacing these 15-year-old meters is replacing our old cash register with a new cash register.
That's
All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The next item is the fiscal year 2023 Cityworks Enterprise License Agreement Renewal. Mr. Burrows.
Yes, sir. Cityworks is an asset management software owned by Azteca Systems, Inc. that we use for asset management and work order management in our field crews. The enterprise license agreement is simply a subscription to their service that is required every year. We use the Cityworks program to direct our maintenance activities and record our cost on our assets to determine what assets we're spending money on and which ones we're spending too much money on and need to be replaced. It's also where we manage the inventory for issuance and storing that in the storeroom module, and there's CCTV modules as well, where all that we televise is then incorporated into Cityworks. So for the previous years, the Dollar value was $42,000 this year. They went up 5% due to increased cost on their end. So the total renewal for fiscal year 2023 is $44,100. This is paid for out of the operating budget and is actually split up amongst the individual operating budgets based off the number of users. So it will be split up between about 6 different operating budgets throughout the accounting process.
Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve the renewal of the fiscal year 2023 Cityworks Enterprise License Agreement with Azteca Systems, Inc. in the amount of $44,100.
Second.
Motion second. Are there any questions?
I'd like to make a comment. I would say that this, beyond the billing software, this is absolutely our most valuable piece of software. It contains virtually all information that's used by staff constantly. I actually got to see the demo. I'm grateful to Andrew working with his staff and spent a lot of time seeing it, and it is absolutely the most valuable thing we could have.
And just a quick question, Andrew, isn't this the platform for our work management system too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 7-0. We'll move to the discussion portion of the agenda. Item 1 is capital improvement fee connection assistance policy. Mr. Burrs?
I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Gormany. He's been working to draft. We discussed it yesterday at the Finance Committee, so he's gonna give a general update of our discussion yesterday.
Okay, so Mr. Burrows originally drafted a capital improvement fee connection assistance policy that was distributed to the commissioners and brought before the commission, not just and committee, the committee. It provided that in certain areas there would be an opportunity for homeowners to finance capital improvement fees if they were an existing home and coming off, for example, septic system onto our system. There would be an opportunity for them to finance the capital improvement fees over a certain period of time. That was deferred by the committee and asked to look at other options for accomplishing the goal of helping these customers get onto our system in a cheaper manner. One of the options that was discussed was to create a new service district within the area that the improvements were installed, and thereafter not charge capital improvement fees in that district and instead increase the rates in that district. Another option was to amend the customer assistance program to include assistance with SIFs for that new service district. There was a discussion yesterday about creating a new service district and increasing the rates within that district and not charging capital improvement fees. But it was essentially determined that that would basically be the same thing as financing the capital improvement fees. So the committee asked Mr. Burrows and I to reevaluate the policy with certain parameters related to the timing, the length of time during which you can finance capital improvement fees, and we'll be working on that and bringing it back to the committee.
Anybody have any questions?
Let me offer a comment. Forgive me if I'm duplicating some of what you said, Charlie, is in these expansion areas, Arco being one, Brunswick-Glynn another, and as we expand into these areas that have been previously skipped by the city and the county's previous utilities approach, this is a method that we think can help not only administer, I should say facilitate those residents to be able to connect to the utility system easier than it might be if they were to pay the capital improvement fee up front as a lump sum. So it's simply a way to facilitate it and make it easier, and that was the intent of our discussion yesterday.
Thank you. We will proceed to the executive director's update. Mr. Burris?
Yes, sir. Our annual town halls are coming up the second week of June. The one on St. Simon's will be June the 8th at the casino, and the one on the mainland will be June 9th at Howard Coffin Park. So all of you, of course, are more than welcome to attend, and any of our citizens that want to learn more about what we're doing here at Joint Water and Sewer and talk about rates for next year and ongoing projects, we will go through all of that like we do every year. And speaking of helping our customers, I got a great update on the low-income housing water assistance program that we agreed to take part in December. So as of lunchtime today, we've had 408 customers that have been approved for assistance for a total of $188,013 worth of assistance. So that's average assistance of $460.82 to pay off past due water accounts and give some credit towards future bills. So we said a few months ago that this was looking like it was going to be a tremendous benefit for our community, and that is continuing to prove more than successful for us. And I urge anyone that needs assistance with their water and sewer bills to reach out to Coastal Georgia Community Action Authority about the LIWAP program so that they can potentially get those bills taken care of by these federal funds.
What was the total amount of the money again?
$188,013.
I thought that's what you said.
And then, only other thing I would say is, we have a vote coming up on Tuesday. Everybody make sure you voted.
Next on the agenda is a commissioner's discussion. Any commissioners have anything they want to discuss?
One quick thing, if I may. I had a citizen reach out to me about a leak at their house that kind of timed out with our meter replacement and was concerned about it. I reached out to Andrew, and he had already talked to Bryce, who he was just very complimentary of. And I reached out to Andrew. Andrew kind of sent some data usage over, and you could see that there was always a leak going on. It didn't have anything to do with the meter replacement itself. But the customer was just very, very pleased and very appreciative of the customer service that Andrew and Bryce and others, I'm sure, put into it. And also that new meter project we're doing, I mean, it allowed to look and see that there's a certain amount of gallons flowing even at 2 o'clock in the morning. It had nothing to do with the meters. They were able to pinpoint that it was a relatively small leak that had created pretty big usage. But the guy was just really, really appreciative and really complimentary of the staff here when he called me.
I will say,
The meters work.
the new meters work. In this situation, the gentleman was losing about 8 gallons an hour, which doesn't sound like a lot of water.
Times 30.
Times 24 hours a day and 30 days
yeah.
in a month, that adds up to a large chunk on your bill. And it was a toilet flapper, if I'm not mistaken.
Very simple problem, but I mean, probably wouldn't have found it if it wasn't for that, because it was a toilet didn't use very often, so it was, it wasn't cycling all the time, so you didn't really hear it. But just very complimentary about again Bryce and others that helped him. And question along the same lines, the project just occurred to me. Did we get the scrap out of that, or is they contractually, did they get all the brass meters?
Ms. Ladonna, which one are we doing on that?
We do get the scrap, but it's a very small amount.
All those 40,000 meters?
Yes, sir. Not a lot after the fees associated with separating the wheat from the chaff and the storage and the.
Just a handful of dollars per
disposal.
meter.
Yes, sir.
Not 40,000.
It adds up, but on a $18 million project, it don't,
30,000.
30,000 meters. On an $18 million project, it's not gonna,
Hey man, every drop in the bucket goes to the bottom line.
at that interest rate though, it'll pay a lot of that interest.
That's true.
Any other commissioners want to say anything? I just want to say that we had the Georgia Rural Water Association annual meeting at Jekyll this past week. And Donna, how many people represented the JWSC there?
I believe it was 71.
Okay.
Very large crowd, yes, sir.
And they had both technical sessions and a large exhibit hall. And I can attest that I saw gray shirts throughout the whole exhibit, and they represented us quite well. And they had vac trucks out front. And so I was talking to one of the fellas who's in charge of that, and he said, well, let's go out there and look at that. And those guys are so happy that we're getting new vac trucks for them. And there's one fellow, I mean, he really has a passion for his job. And so it's just really nice to see people in this industry that work for us have such a passion, and that's what it takes. And so we just need to congratulate them, be very thankful and blessed that we have people like that. I'm just amazed. But that's my report, and I'm just tickled to death with the people we have working here. We don't need to have an executive session, do we?
No, sir.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Motion adjourned. Thank you very much.
Y'all will hear me talking soon.